What an adventure! It all started with a simple click online. We decided to embark on a 100-day journey. We were going to raise frogs from the very beginning. The first step was finding the eggs. We went on the internet and found someone selling 100 mystery frog eggs. We had no idea what kind of frogs they would become. It was a complete surprise. We placed the order and waited with great excitement. A few days later, a small package arrived. Inside was a container filled with what looked like tiny clear jelly balls. Each one had a small black dot in the center. These were our future frogs, all 100 of them. We carefully placed the delicate eggs into a clean tank with fresh water. Now the waiting game began. Every day we would check on them. We watched the tiny black dots inside the eggs start to change shape. They were getting longer, looking less like dots and more like tiny commas. We tested the water quality to make sure it was perfect. And guess what we found under the microscope? A tardigrade. These are also known as water bears. They are the toughest animals on Earth. Finding one meant our water was healthy and full of life. It was a great sign for our frog eggs. Then one morning, we noticed something was wrong. Several of the eggs were missing. We counted them again and again. Over 20 eggs had vanished overnight. What could have happened? We searched the tank carefully. Tucked away under a leaf, we found the culprit. It was a small snail. The sneaky snail had been having a midnight snack on our precious eggs. We quickly and gently removed the snail from the tank. We didn't want to lose any more of our future friends. It was our first big challenge in this frog-raising journey, and we had solved the mystery. Finally, on day 12, the magic happened. The eggs started to hatch. One by one, tiny tadpoles wriggled free from their jelly-like homes. It was an incredible sight. Soon, the tank was swarming with about 100 tiny swimming tadpoles. They were so small and full of energy. They swam around, exploring their new world. Our project was officially underway. We went from 100 tiny eggs to 100 tiny tadpoles. The first stage of their amazing life cycle was complete. We were so excited to see what would happen next on our 100-day adventure. Raising tadpoles is not as easy as it looks. The days after hatching were filled with both joy and worry. We loved watching the hundreds of tiny tadpoles swim around. They were fascinating to observe. However, we soon faced a very sad reality. Despite our best efforts, we started losing them. Each day we would find that a few more had not survived. The number of tadpoles in our tank began to decrease. We knew we had to act fast if we wanted to save the rest. It was a difficult time, and we were determined to do everything we could to help them. We learned that keeping the water clean is the most important job. Tadpoles are very sensitive to changes in their environment. We started doing daily water changes. This meant carefully removing some of the old water and replacing it with fresh, clean water. We also used special medicine designed to protect tadpoles from common illnesses. We hoped these efforts would make a difference. It was a lot of hard work, but seeing the remaining tadpoles swim actively gave us hope. We were fighting to keep them alive and healthy, one water change at a time. While we were busy caring for our tadpoles, one of our team members went on a side quest. He traveled all the way to the Florida Everglades. His mission was to find wild frogs and tadpoles in their natural habitat. He waded through the swamps and explored the wetlands. It was a real-life adventure. He wanted to see how these amazing creatures live in the wild. He even managed to catch a large wild frog to get a closer look before releasing it back into its home. This trip reminded us of the incredible diversity of amphibians out there in the world. Back at home, our tadpole population had stabilized. We had lost more than half of them, which was heartbreaking. But the ones that remained were strong. They were growing bigger and more active every single day. We fed them special tadpole food and watched them eat. They were survivors. This challenging period taught us an important lesson about nature. Life is fragile. Not everyone makes it. But for those who do, the journey continues. We were now focused on giving the strongest tadpoles the best possible care for the next stage of their lives. Our hard work began to pay off in a spectacular way. On day 64 we witnessed a milestone. We were checking on the tadpoles when we saw it. One of them had something new. It had sprouted 2 tiny back legs. This was the first sign of metamorphosis, the amazing change from a tadpole to a frog. We were so thrilled. It meant our tadpoles were finally growing up. Soon after, a second tadpole grew legs, and then a third. They still had their long tails, but they were starting to look more and more like tiny frogs. It was a huge success for our project. As the days went by, the transformation continued. The tadpoles with legs started to develop their front legs too. Their tails began to get shorter as their bodies absorbed them for energy. It was amazing to watch this process unfold. They were changing right before our eyes. We knew they would soon need a home that had both water and land. It was time to prepare for their new life as froglets. Their journey from being fully aquatic creatures to air-breathing amphibians was almost complete. We were so proud of our little survivors. This is a good time for a fun fact. Did you know that some frogs can jump up to 20 times their own body length? Imagine if you could do that. That incredible jumping power helps them escape from predators and catch their food. Our little frogs weren't jumping yet, but we knew they would be soon. We started to think about what kind of environment would let them practice their amazing jumping skills safely. This little piece of information got us even more excited about building their final home. We wanted them to have plenty of space to leap and explore. By the end of our 100-day timeline, the transformation was complete. The few tadpoles that survived the difficult early weeks had become perfect, tiny frogs. They were a beautiful, vibrant green color, identifying them as little green tree frogs. They no longer had tails, and they breathed air with their newly developed lungs. They had made it through the most dangerous part of their lives. Our mission to raise frogs from mystery eggs was a success. Now, these little jewels needed a palace to live in, and we had just the thing in mind. Our tiny green tree frogs deserved a special home. We decided to build them a custom terrarium. Our project started with an unusual item, an IKEA cabinet. We planned to turn this simple piece of furniture into a lush, tropical paradise. The first step was to make it completely waterproof. We carefully sealed every seam and corner with silicone. We also added a sturdy wooden frame to support the structure. It was a big do-it-yourself project, but we wanted to create the perfect habitat. This wasn't just a tank, it was going to be a 5-star frog hotel. We spared no expense on outfitting the terrarium. The supplies cost over $500. We installed a special light that mimics the sun to help the plants grow. To create a humid, jungle-like atmosphere, we added a rainforest fogger. For the background, we used expanding foam to sculpt realistic-looking rocks and ledges. Then came the living elements. We planted a variety of live jungle plants to give the frogs places to climb and hide. Finally, we added a bioactive substrate on the bottom, filled with tiny bugs that would help keep the enclosure clean. It was a self-sustaining ecosystem. Once the terrarium was ready, it was time to think about food. What do tiny tree frogs eat? We started by feeding them flightless fruit flies. They were small enough for the frogs to catch and eat. However, we noticed that the frogs sometimes had trouble catching them. We decided to try something new. We switched their diet to small crickets. This turned out to be a much better choice. The frogs loved hunting the crickets, and it was fascinating to watch their natural predator instincts kick in. Keeping our frogs well-fed and happy was our top priority. Today, on September 20th, 2025, our little frogs are thriving in their IKEA palace. They climb the leaves, bask under the fake sun, and enjoy the misty fog. They have grown from tiny dots and jelly eggs to energetic jumping frogs. Our 100-day journey was full of challenges, surprises, and incredible moments of wonder. From discovering a snail thief to finding a tardigrade, and from losing so many tadpoles to celebrating the first tiny legs, it was an unforgettable experience. The sound of their happy ribbits in their custom-built jungle is the perfect end to our amazing adventure.